So I was going to wait a video before posting this one, but I think this has more weight than I'd like to give it credit for. I'm going to show you my personal, as in for me, 10-step plan that I use to achieve financial freedom, and if you want to copy my notes, you're more than welcome to. Now, I know most people usually follow one of Dave Ramsey's baby steps, which is heavy on eliminating debt before all else, and while I do like that a lot of his other advice just sounds not great to me, at least outside of the baby steps. And on the other side, you have the Money Guy's financial order of operations, which I think has become the de facto go-to financial optimization method for a lot of people who are trying to achieve financial freedom and financial independence. And I do agree for people who are taking a conventional route and haven't had to worry about adversity, this is probably the best route to go to, especially if you bought a house before the pandemic. However, a lot of people I talk with are not in a situation where they can lock the lion's share of their money away in a retirement account and just pray they'll get to use it again when they're 59 and a half. I think a record number of people rating their 401k accounts should show that, in fact, more and more people are not able to wait that long anymore, and not by choice. As I've said in the first two videos, the job market, especially for white-collar workers, is absolutely horrible right now, and it is not going to let up anytime soon, especially with AI around. Finding a job has never been more difficult, and studies are starting to predict that an inheritocracy, one where your success will be primarily based on what your parents leave behind for you, will be the new status quo. So for the people who do have 6 or 7 figures waiting for them when their parents pass on, hey, great, you can probably take a more aggressive method like the financial order of operations, and it's probably going to work out for you. But if you have to be self-made, you're going to have to play it smart in the beginning. Building without a safety net, you can't take the same financial risks that a standard plan assumes you can absorb. What if another crash similar to the Great Recession happens? Sure, you can just not look at your 401k, but usually in crashes like that one that go a pretty long time, people lose employment as well. They lose value on their assets and everything goes down in value. Some just can't wait long enough to weather the storm and recover, and eventually they're going to have to cash out at the worst possible time, locking in the loss. So today I'm going to show you my personal, as in for me, 10-step plan of where we put our money to achieve financial autonomy, which I feel better balances our risk tolerance with the economic reality that most people are living in. I will also have a separate video for each of these steps to go into a bit more detail for ideas to achieve said steps. So if you want to see more videos like that, why don't you please... You know, I should just say like and subscribe next time instead of being quiet when I'm on camera, because just seeing my ugly ass face with the subscriber button feels kind of awkward. Okay, 3 quick things before we start. First, this is not financial advice. I am simply showing you strategies that I use in my own life. I type them into my computer, describe them in detail, and if you're interested, of course, you're free to copy my notes. Second, this is how I do it, but there are variations depending on the situation, but I'll discuss those variations when we do each of their steps in their own separate videos. And third, this plan assumes you at least have some kind of income coming in already, that you have a job, or at least some kind of side hustle where your income outweighs your costs. So with that, I did categorize the steps into 4 tiers of risk capacity. Risk capacity being simply how much you can afford to take that risk without destroying you. So I have 4 tiers: no, low, moderate, and high, and I'm going to start with no risk capacity. So at no risk capacity, you are 1 bad month away from a serious problem. This is genuinely the paycheck to paycheck crowd. You have little to no savings, and if a major life occurrence hits, like your car breaking down, or you get your hours cut at work, if you work hourly, of course, you're in genuine financial jeopardy. In this case, you're going to stick strictly to the plan. Avoid eating out outside of the very occasional treat. Obviously, no gambling, no stocks, no investing right now, no lending money to friends, no co-signing loans. Keep all money in cash. So savings accounts, CDs, money market accounts. The goal right now is not to grow wealth. It is to build the floor so that everything else can be done safely. Every dollar that leaks out of this stage costs you more than $1 of progress. And the first step is going to be building a $2,000 emergency fund. Now you're going to put that fund into a checking or savings account, or if you have an online bank that has the proper stuff, you could probably do both, and $1,000 in each. Preferably, you're going to want one with no fees, because fees are going to push you back. But I think most banks have an option where you don't have to worry about fees too much if you do certain things like maybe get a credit card from them or just use an online bank. Honestly, I use Ally myself. This is the first line of defense before anything else. And of course, you're going to have to keep your debts current while you are doing this. I know some say the standard is $1,000 though, but I've heard put $1,000 in emergency savings since like the Great Recession. So back then, $1,000 did pay for emergencies that today would cost close to $2,000, maybe a tad less. I think it was, depending on the situation, between $1,600 to $2,300 today. So let's just keep it even and call it $2,000. Now, the next video will be on this step, so I'm not going to get too much into how to get it, but make this your top priority if you don't already have it stuffed away. Step 2. Contribute to your 401k up to the maximum to get the full employer match, but only if the match vests immediately and you get a rate of at least 50% on the dollar, because immediately vested free money is a guaranteed return with no downside. You get 50 cents for every dollar you contribute right off the bat. And if you do hit hard times and you need to withdraw from it, it's likely the penalty and the taxes are still going to leave you with some free money left over. And now, just one caveat though, and this is your call, I would cap contributions right now at around 6% of gross income, even if the employer match would reward you for going higher, unless it's a full match, like 100% dollar for dollar match, and you can genuinely afford it, then of course go nuts. Step 3, pay off all your debts except for the mortgage, medical, and student loans. So basically credit card balances, car loans, personal loans, any sort of other loans that you have other than those 3. Now the reason why for these exceptions, with medical debt, it's often negotiable, interest-free, and increasingly ignored by mortgage lenders, and getting a house is going to be a big part of this plan. Federal student loans have income-driven repayment options, deferment, and potential forgiveness, and they don't behave like consumer debt, and they're usually got a lot more protections with it. And finally, if you have a mortgage payment, it's probably so large that asking you to wait for investing in this economy until it's paid off would be a little ridiculous. With the opportunity of free money you have in tax-advantaged accounts, that would cushion a blow from the stock market. So that's the main reason why with the mortgage. So still keep them current though, of course, but you want to get rid of all your other bad debts at this point. So once you've paid off all the bad debts, gotten the $2,000 emergency fund, and can safely fund to the match for your company on your 401k, you are now ready to graduate to the low-risk capacity category. Welcome to low-risk capacity. You still have obligations that can threaten your stability, like debt or an incomplete emergency cushion. I mean, you just have $2,000 at this point, maybe a little bit more, but you can at least weather storms that most living paycheck to paycheck cannot. At this point, we can start entering the market a little bit in these tax-advantaged accounts if you haven't already done it in step 2. Now, when you invest, you want to keep it as boring as possible. I personally would go broad total market ETFs and mutual funds only with low or no cost expense ratios. My 2 favorites are Vanguard and Fidelity, but if you work for like a white collar company, most of them are going to have State Street on their 401ks, so I have to throw State Street here as well. So the funds I limit myself to are a US total market index fund like VTI or FZROX, a total market international fund like VXUS, or a special lower cost mix I'll talk about when we get to 401ks, and FZILX, and a total market bond like BND or FXNAX. Bet the world. All right, that's the safest thing that you could possibly do. And of course, you want to keep spending tight and intentional, which leads us to step 4. Now at this point, you're going to want to build to a 3-month emergency funding cash. Now, you have to do your budget first, and we might do a video on making your budget, of course, later down the road. But once you have your floor from step 1, you can now extend it to something that will actually give you some room to breathe if things go sideways. 3 months is a little bit on the small side, but I expect while you're in the low risk capacity tier, you're still going to be slowly building this up while you are moving up the steps. So I don't expect you to just keep it at 3 months. Like, keep building on it. Keep making sure that you have leftovers. That way you can add on to that emergency fund. Moving on to step 5. Max your HSA if you're enrolled in a high deductible health plan. The HSA is a health savings account. And if you're outside of the US, I know this is going to sound crazy, but medical costs here in the US are ridiculous. And the HSA is honestly the best tax vehicle that exists here in the US because it offers tax deductible going in, tax-free growth, and tax-free out for medical expenses. This is conditional, of course, on a high deductible health plan eligibility. So if you're not on a high deductible health plan, this step will not apply to you. You can just skip it. However, I will say at this point, you're going to want to contribute to your 401k now up to the employer match if you weren't able to do so in step 2, due to vesting conditions, of course, and do it up to the full match, as at this point you should be able to afford it. Now, once you reach full vesting at your job at any time, this moves up in priority as the first thing you should do. So you would just pause the entire plan and just get done with the 401k, then come back to where you left off. So for example, if you're currently at the 3-month emergency fund in cash, however, you are now fully vested, go ahead now and work on the 401k first before getting that 3-month emergency fund in cash if you're at like 2 months or something. Step 6, it's time to pay off your student loans. You now have enough financial cushion to attack these aggressively. So you want to hit the private loans first if you have both federal and private, as private loans carry no protections and they typically are higher rates. If you're on an income-driven repayment plan working toward public service loan forgiveness, you might want to evaluate, of course, whether accelerated payoff still makes sense for your situation before proceeding with doing so. And if you find out that it's not, and we might talk a little bit more about this in detail on that video, then you're going to go ahead and just skip to step 7. Now we get to the good stuff. Step 7. Contribute to a Roth IRA and build your emergency fund simultaneously. What you are looking for is the combined Roth contributions and liquid savings equal 12 full months of expenses, and your cash savings must cover 6 of them. So why do we do this simultaneously? Well, here's a little trick that people don't really talk to you about with the Roth IRAs, and it's that Roth contributions, not earnings, just the contributions, can be withdrawn penalty-free anytime. So you can make it a dual-purpose emergency fund, though of course very much not recommended, but it's there, as once you withdraw your contributions, they cannot be recontributed. Now once you've gotten the 1-year emergency fund, the HSA is maxed, and the 401k is up to the full employer match, you're now ready to graduate to the moderate risk capacity category. Now at the moderate risk capacity category at this stage, your foundation can absorb a significant financial hit without threatening your stability. This is where the plan starts working for you rather than the other way around. You can kind of stop sweating the small stuff at this point. If you want something on a whim, you have some room. Lending a friend money for a trip or rough patch is okay within reason. There's this 0.01% rule that goes around too. Once your net worth is at that point, just go ahead and take out the first 4 digits, and however many dollars is left over, you can pretty much just spend that, every once in a while and not have to worry and look at the price too much. But of course, don't gamble, don't co-sign loans, don't ever do that stuff because they're asymmetric risks with no ceiling on the downside. On the investment side, you can start tilting your portfolio a little bit, maybe start adding some small mid-cap funds if you want to take a little bit more risk and try to get a little bit more return out of it, because I know the returns are a little bit higher there. Maybe you want to try out stuff like I-bonds or sector ETFs. There's other stuff out there too. I haven't really researched too much into it because I think our household especially just got to this category a little while ago, so we're still researching on this, like other stuff that I can do other than just total market index funds. But you have a little bit of wiggle room where you can probably start looking at taking a little bit more risk. That's why it's called moderate risk capacity. And with that, we're going to start with step 8, pay off all remaining debts. At this point, you should have no more than 2 remaining, medical and mortgage. If you bought a new car, I guess you could possibly have an auto loan, so you might want to tackle the car first at this point. I mean, it will be several years down the road at this point that many of you will be at this stage. But go ahead and tackle the mortgage first, since it's your largest remaining liability and it carries a fixed monthly obligation that defines your financial floor. Plus, once this house is paid off, the worst you could do at that stage, you would still have your home. I mean, you still have to pay property taxes, but property taxes should be much lower than renting. With medical debt, again, if you can negotiate it down where possible, do so, but you could probably go ahead and start paying that off too and not worry about it. And when that is done and this step is done, you should be completely debt-free. And if you've been saving up enough, you might be very close to what I call financial autonomy, the point where your budget is low enough and your savings are high enough that you have so much runway you could start living life the way that you want to. And of course, if you have already been doing that with your job and you like what you're doing and you like your life, well, probably wouldn't need to worry about that at this point, huh? All the better. So once you've gotten to that point, step 9, go ahead and max out your Roth IRA annually. It's time to take advantage of all remaining tax advantaged accounts that we can. If you have kids, look into a 529 plan as well. Also at this stage, time to go full Roth and convert your existing 401k contributions, not your balances, contributions to a Roth 401k if you have it available. The reason for this is because that way you're going to have some money that is going to be tax-free when you retire and some money that is going to be traditional. You're going to have to pay taxes on it. Basically, the idea here is you're going to want enough in your Roth 401k to not have to worry about paying for taxes when you're ready to withdraw from your 401k. And the price match that you're going to get, the employer match, I should say, is going to be taxable. And the idea is we want to cover enough taxable withdrawal in retirement to absorb the standard deduction and not much more. However, if your plan doesn't offer Roth 401k, you can go ahead and skip, and we're going to move on to the final step, step 10. So step 10 is investing in a taxable brokerage using originally broad index ETFs and total bond market funds as your primary vehicle. Of course, if you want to use anything on the moderate risk capacity category, that's fine as well. The target should be 300 months of expenses, which is 25 years. So that is the standard financial independence threshold due to the 4% rule. And this is going to be across all investments and cash combined. Of those 300 months, I personally I'm thinking 60 of it should remain liquid. I would say the 60 months of liquid can be divided between 24 months in cash and 36 months in a taxable brokerage. That 60-month liquid floor is your sequence of returns buffer so that you can absorb almost any market crash in history. The cash portion covers your immediate needs while the brokerage portion has time to recover before you need to touch it. At this stage, you may also opt to increase your 401k contributions beyond the match, but I actually am not a fan of putting more into the 401k beyond the employer match. And I will say one thing though. If you're older than 50, it might not be a bad idea because your timeline is a lot shorter than someone who is in their 20s or 30s and need a bit more liquid. So maybe a good idea if you're in your 50s, but if you're in your 20s or 30s, I would avoid doing the 401k past the match unless you want to. You're more than welcome to. It's not obviously, it's still a tax advantage there where you get a deduction from your check if you're going traditional, or if you are Roth, you're not worrying about taxes when you take it out. I just feel like a brokerage account is going to provide more access and you won't have to worry about the penalty if something goes south. And I have seen way too much things going south for people that the numbers really do not show that I just cannot agree on maxing out the 401k, but you're more than welcome to. I mean, it's still not a terrible move. At the end of step 10, you've essentially reached a stage where you are truly financially independent. I think at this point, you're probably in the lean fire category, and you wouldn't have to work another day in your life as long as you stick to within your survival budget and you're ready for the high risk capacity category. Now, at this point, there's no steps. Money that enters this tier is money you could lose entirely without changing your life. It's yours. Just do whatever you want at that point, Individual stocks, crypto, go buy Atlas Earth parcels, speculative ventures. I mean, anything that a financial advisor would tell you to avoid, it's all on the table, honestly. I mean, no one in their right mind's ever going to tell you, hey, go put your money on Fartcoin or something, but it's there. And of course, you only do that with money beyond step 10 and not a single dollar more. Personally, I would say much less than that. Maybe you want to cushion your budget after all, so you have to readjust your budget, go back down a step and keep building until you reach the 25 years of those expenses, then come back and do it if you want. Again, that's up to you. Whatever you want, just it's your money at that point, but always return to your budget at least once a year. Lifestyle creep is real after all, and if your expenses have grown enough to knock your 300-month calculation back below the threshold, again, go back a step, save up, and get back here again. All right, everyone, so that is my plan that we use in our household in a nutshell. We'll go through each of the steps in the next several videos. And if you are interested in seeing those videos, I hope you give me a subscribe so that way you can watch them when the videos come out. And if you're watching this from several years out into the future or decades out into the future, there might be a few more adjustments too that you'll have to adjust to cost of living inflation. For example, if you're watching this in like the 2030s or something, probably going to be like $2,500, $3,000 emergency fund. Next video, we're going to start with that emergency fund. So if you want to get a head start on that, why don't you check out some Atlas Earth videos on the left and Beer Money reviews on my right. And I will see you all in the next video. This is Pharaoh Silver signing off.